Welcome, my rebels. Take a moment to subscribe to Temple of Nyx and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Now, settle in, let your shoulders soften, and gently tighten them for a second. Hold and release. Clench your jaw very lightly, then let it fall loose like sleep is melting it. Curl your fingers into a soft fist. Hold and open as if you're letting the day slip away. Good, because tonight we're stepping into a story the world barely remembers. Lilith was not the first nor the last. This is the forbidden tale of Naamah. What follows belongs to legend and folklore, not belief, not scripture, and not doctrine, but a story remembered in whispers and shadows. Lilith was not the first, nor the last. The whisper of this ancient truth drifts through the midnight air like a haunting melody, inviting you to listen.
I speak to you now from the edges of dawn and dream, from the quiet moments when darkness yields its secret.
My name is Naamah, and my story has been nearly forgotten by the waking world. Yet in hushed corners of old libraries and the flicker of campfire tales, you may have heard fragments of it, a name murmured with equal parts fear and fascination. Lilith's legend is known, the first woman who defied Adam and flew to freedom. But after Lilith's departure from Eden, the world did not fall silent. Another song came, I was born generations after Eden's gates had closed, in a time when the children of Eve and Adam had begun to weave lives and destinies east of Eden. I came into being as a daughter of Cain's line, a descendant of the first murderer, in a world already stained with exile and longing. From the moment of my birth, I carried two legacies within me, the creative spark of civilization and the restless shadow of rebellion. My story is not one of holy writ or canon scripture. It lives in the spaces between, in folklore and forgotten lore. The rabbis and storytellers could not agree on who or what I truly was. Some spoke of me as a mortal woman of great beauty, whose deeds were pleasant and noble, while others whispered that I was a temptress who beat upon a drum to draw souls into idolatry. In truth, I have been both. I have been praised as a bringer of comfort and song, and reviled as a demoness of seduction and shadow. Across the ages I have worn many faces, a gifted musician, a devoted lover, a mother of monsters, a queen of hell, a gentle guide of lost souls. But let me start at the beginning, as I remember it, and perhaps you will see how those pieces form a whole. Close your eyes and listen to the night. Hear the distant strains of music that waft through the air, my music, for I have always been a creature of song. The very meaning of my name, Naamah, is pleasant or sweetness, and some say it comes from a root word meaning to sing. If you have ever felt the irresistible pull of a lullaby in the dark, or a strange harmony in the wind that stirred your heart, you have heard my ancient melody. Allow me to guide you now into the past, to the first dawn of cities and secrets, where my tale began. Chapter 1. Daughter of Cain. I was born in a land east of Eden, where Cain's descendants built the first city from brick and hope. The city was called Enoch, named for Cain's son, a gesture of defiance perhaps to prove that life could blossom even under the shadow of fratricide. In the 7th generation from creation, humanity was still young, but already we crafted, loved, and rebelled in equal measure. My father was Lamech, great-great-grandson of Cain himself. He was a man burdened by the weight of our bloodline's history. In his veins ran Cain's restless wanderer spirit, and so too in mine. Lamech had 2 wives, as was not uncommon among our people then. My mother was Zillah, soft-spoken and strong, and my stepmother was Ada, gentle and wise. Between them and my father, our family was large. I grew up with siblings whose talents would become legend. My half-brothers Jabal and Jubal, sons of Ada, and my full brother Tubal Cain, son of Zillah, each forged a new path for mankind. Jabal was the ancestor of all who live in tents and tend herds, the first nomad and herdsman who taught us to dwell under the open sky alongside our flocks. Jubal, his brother, had music in his soul. He crafted flutes and lyres, drawing melodies from them that made the desert nightingales fall silent in envy. Jubal became the father of all who play the harp and pipe, the first musician in our histories. Tubal Cain, my brother, learned the secrets of copper and iron. He was the first smith, a master of fire and anvil, forging tools and weapons from the earth's ores. Through Tubal Cain, humanity learned to shape the world with metal and flame. And what of me, Naamah, the sister of Tubal Cain? The chronicles say little of my deeds compared to my brothers. No craft or invention is ascribed to me in the terse genealogies of our people. Yet I too had a gift, one not so easily recorded on a tablet or scroll, the gift of song and grace. From childhood, I possessed a voice that could soothe or inspire. My family called me Naamah, the lovely, the pleasant one, because of the sweetness I brought into their lives. Some say that my name also hints at my destiny to be the first singer, the ancestress of vocal music. While Jubal gave mankind instruments to play, I gave them a voice to echo in the night. In a way, I became the keeper of songs and the first to turn music into poetry. My childhood was filled with both the brightness of innovation and the shadows of our lineage's curse. We dwelt on the outskirts of Eden's memory, close enough that our forefather Adam still lived and could tell tales of paradise lost, but far enough that we had to forge our own destiny without Eden's light. I remember sitting by our campfires at night, a wide-eyed girl listening to the elders recount the ancient stories. Grandfather Methuselah, with his long silver beard, would describe the garden our ancestors lost, a place of unimaginable beauty, and the sorrow of their exile. By the fire's glow, I'd watch the play of emotions on the faces around me, awe, regret, longing. My father Lamech, usually a taciturn man, sometimes broke his silence on those nights to speak of Cain, our forebear. Cain, who tilled the soil and spilled blood upon it, cursed and protected all at once. The mark on Cain's brow had faded through generations, but its legacy lingered. Father's voice cracked as he confessed a frightening tale. In his younger days, in a moment of confusion and rage, Lamech had killed a man. Some said it was an accident during a hunt, that his arrow, guided by Tubal Cain, struck the figure of great Cain himself by mistake, killing him. Others whispered that in despair, Lamech then struck down Tubal Cain as well, realizing what he'd done. Whether truth or legend, father lamented, I have slain a man for wounding me. Yes, a young man for bruising me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's shall be 77-fold. Those words chilled me. I saw Mother Zillah reach to comfort him, and Ada bury her face in her hands. The curse of violence clung to our house, it seemed, an old wrath that might never let us be. Yet by daylight, such grim shadows retreated. In the golden sun of our valley, life felt hopeful. We were pioneers of a new world, the children of Cain and of Seth, for the lines of Adam often intermingled in trade and travel. Under the bright sky, I learned to milk goats and weave baskets, to beat copper into bowls alongside Tubal Cain, and to sing the songs that Jobal taught on his flute. On many an afternoon, the air would ring with the rhythmic hammer of Tubal Cain's forge, accompanied by Jobal's piping and my own humming. Those were productive, happy days, when it seemed our family's gifts were being used to better the lives of all around us. It was in the evenings, however, that my star truly rose. After the day's work, Our people would gather for food, storytelling, and sometimes dancing, and I, still barely a maiden, became a central voice at these gatherings. At first I was shy to sing in front of others, but gentle Ada encouraged me. "Child, your voice can mend what is broken in us. Don't be afraid." So I sang. I sang the playful songs that made children giggle and clap. I sang the morning dirges when we buried our old, my voice carrying the souls of the departed on its wings. And I sang wordless tunes by firelight that moved strong men to tears without them knowing why. My drum, a small hand drum Jubal made for me, became my companion. With it I kept time as I chanted ancient lullabies or vibrant chants. People said I could make pleasant the end of any day with my music. In fact, later sages would remember me as a woman who enticed through music, who could use symbols and song to spellbind all who listened. I noticed, as I grew older, that not only comfort was born from my songs, but also a kind of enchantment. When I performed, eyes followed my every movement. If I laughed and spun in dance, others would laugh and dance. If I wept in a song of sorrow, a dozen hardened hunters would discreetly wipe tears from their cheeks. It was a power, though I did not yet name it so, and with power comes attention. Soon, word of my beauty and talent spread to neighboring tribes. Visitors began to arrive at our campfires, ostensibly to trade or pay respects to my illustrious brothers, but inevitably their eyes would stray to me. I was coming of age, and many a young man and not a few older ones started vying for my hand. They brought carved beads, rare shells, even a young lamb as offerings to my father, hoping to win a smile from me. I tried to be gracious, but inside I felt overwhelmed by suitors who admired only the surface of me. They praised my face and my voice, yet none seemed to truly understand my heart's deeper longings. Often I would retreat after the festivities, slipping away to find solitude under the vast sky, where I could sing only for the stars and myself. It was during those solitary twilights that I first sensed something listening in the silence beyond human ken. I remember one evening in particular, I had wandered to a hillock crowned with wild flowers after gently rebuffing yet another eager suitor. The sun had just set, leaving stripes of purple and orange along the horizon. I sat and sang a gentle, melancholic tune, a wordless melody carried by the breeze. As the last note fell, I heard what sounded like an echo, faint and distant, a few ghostly notes trailing after mine. Startled, I glanced around. The hill was empty, the fields quiet. Only a lone acacia tree stood nearby, its leaves rustling softly. I shook off the odd feeling and started the melody again, louder this time. There, it came again, an ethereal echo, as if some unseen voice answered me from afar. It blended with mine for an instant, a perfect haunting harmony, then faded. A presence prickled at the edge of my awareness, not hostile, but curious and intent. I suddenly knew I was not alone. That night, I returned to our encampment, deep in thought. I told no one, not even Jubal, of what I'd felt, but night after night, I became increasingly aware that when I sang into the dusk, something out there listened. Sometimes I'd catch the briefest glint of what could be eyes in the distance. Fireflies, I told myself, or reflections of our campfire in animal eyes. Yet an inner voice whispered the truth. The eyes of a wild creature do not usually watch a singer with such focused intent, nor do fireflies hover in one place for minutes on end. The truth revealed itself dramatically at one of our harvest festivals. The gathering was merry. We had a good grain yield that season, and even families from distant settlements joined our feast. Under garlands of leaves and flickering lantern light, I led a circle dance, my drum in hand. Jubal's flute trilled, and dozens clapped in rhythm. Laughter and music swirled like warm wine through the air. I felt a rare, exhilarating freedom as I danced faster, the beat of my drum quickening hearts around me. In the midst of our revelry, a sudden hush fell. It rippled out from those at the edge of the clearing, their faces upturned in astonishment. One by one, dancers faltered and stopped until only my drumbeat persisted. Confused, I followed their gazes. There, perched atop a tall date palm at the clearing's edge, was a silhouette that made my breath catch. It was the figure of a man, but no mere man. Even in silhouette, I could see he was tall and powerfully built. The faint light of the rising moon glinted off something like burnished bronze, where his skin caught it, and from his back unfurled what looked to be a pair of great wings, dark and half-furled around his form. A collective murmur of awe, Malak Elohim, an angel of God, rose from the onlookers. An angel, one of the heavenly watchers, whose duty it was to observe mankind from afar, had revealed himself among us. My heart pounded wildly. I stood frozen in the center of the circle, every fiber of my being aware that those glowing eyes in the palm tree were fixed directly on me. For a timeless moment, the angel and I stared at one another across the firelit clearing. I felt a curious mix of fear and wonder. His eyes, even from that distance, shone with an intense fascination that sent heat to my cheeks. I realized I was still holding my drum. It slipped from my numb fingers to the ground with a dull thud. As if shaken from a trance, the winged watcher suddenly leapt from the palm. Gasps went up as he descended, but he did not come among us. At the last moment, his wings snapped wide and bore him aloft, carrying him out beyond the ring of light into the darkness. In a single breath he was gone. Only the swaying fronds of the palm and the stunned silence of the crowd proved that he had been there at all. My knees felt weak. Someone steadied me, Mother Adar by her scent, and I realized I had been trembling. All eyes now turned to me, the young woman whose song had, it seemed, drawn an angel down from the sky. I knew in that instant that life, as I'd known it, was forever changed. A mix of dread and excitement washed over me. The angels had noticed Naamah. That night, whispers ran through our people like wildfire. Some proclaimed it a sign of divine favor, that an angel found our celebrations pleasing. Others were uneasy. What did it mean that he had stared so at Lamech's daughter? My own mind was a whirlwind. I lay in my tent, sleepless, replaying the vision of those wings and eyes. Part of me thrilled at the encounter, another part cowered. Why had he been watching me? And would he return? Ancient sages later recounted that I was so beautiful and alluring. Even the heavenly angels sought to wander after me, and that I fled from them. Indeed, in the first moments after that angel's appearance, I had fled, bolting from the clearing to hide in my tent, heart hammering, as if to shield myself from the gaze of heaven. I did not know whether to feel honored or cursed. Was I to be a second Eve, tempting celestial beings as the first woman had, so it was rumored, tempted the serpent? Or was this simply an angelic test of our community's virtue? My family tried to comfort me, but they too were wary. Father Lamech forbade me from wandering alone at night for a time, fearing perhaps that the angel might come to steal me away. I obeyed outwardly, but my spirit churned with curiosity that would not be contained. I could still sense that presence out there on the wind some nights, an unseen watcher hovering beyond the firelight, and with each passing dusk my resolve grew stronger. I needed to know who or what had been so captivated by my song, and what he intended. Fear wrestled with fascination in my breast, but at last fascination won. One night when the camp was quiet and the moon a slender crescent, I slipped out from my tent. I draped myself in a dark shawl and padded barefoot past the smoldering embers of the central fire. My family slept. Only a lone guard or two stood watch at the perimeter, and they did not notice me ghost past like a shadow. I made my way to the stand of acacia trees at the edge of our settlement, the very place near where the angel had perched. My mouth was dry, but I lifted my voice in a soft humming of the lullaby I had sung earlier, the one that seemed to echo back. I let the notes float upwards, a gentle offering to the night. For a long moment, nothing stirred. I began to wonder if I'd been foolish, chasing phantoms conjured by my own imagination. But just as I lowered my voice, I sensed a shift in the air behind me. A faint sound like the rustle of leather against leaves reached my ears. My heart leapt into my throat. Slowly I turned. He stepped from the shadows between two acacias as a god might step out of a dream. Moonlight illuminated the angel's face at last, and it was breathtaking, unearthly fair, with high cheekbones and eyes that glowed faintly like coals beneath ashes. His hair was dark and flowed to his shoulders. He wore a tunic of some shimmering fabric, and across his back his folded wings ruffled slightly, black with iridescent hints of midnight blue. He regarded me not with menace, but with an intense, almost yearning expression. In that instant, all my rehearsed words evaporated. I could only stare, enraptured and terrified all at once. This was one of the Watchers, an immortal being set to observe humanity, now standing mere paces from me. Every story I'd heard of angels flashed through my mind. Ministers of fire, deliverers of divine edicts, fearsome and pure. And yet here and now, all I sensed from this being was a profound, disarming gentleness, tangled with longing. You were watching me," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The angel inclined his head, a hint of a smile ghosting across his lips. "Yes," he replied, and the simple word rolled out in a melodic timbre that made my skin tingle. "Forgive me." I blinked. Of all things, I had not expected an apology. "Why?" I asked, taking a half step forward almost involuntarily. "Why were you watching?" He hesitated, as though uncertain how to explain. "Your music," he said at last, each syllable careful. "It moved me. I have watched your kind for many years, but never have I heard a voice like yours." He paused, then added in a softer tone, "I could not stay away." A flush warmed my cheeks despite the night air. I realized I should be afraid a heavenly being had broken protocol because of me. Yet his words filled me with shy wonder. I summoned my courage. "What is your name?" He seemed surprised by the question. Perhaps he expected me to be struck dumb or to fall on my face in fear. Instead, I stood gazing at him, waiting. After a moment, he answered, "Shamdan." The name fell quietly, and I sensed power in it. "Shamdan," I repeated softly, letting the unfamiliar sound play on my tongue. He inhaled sharply, as if my mere speaking of his name affected him strongly. In that moment, the last of my fear melted away, replaced by curiosity and something more. The way he looked at me, no man of flesh and blood had ever looked at me so. There was admiration there, and wonder, and a touch of sorrow. We talked then, I know not for how long, only that the moon was high when we began, and setting when silence finally fell between us. I learned that Shamdan had been stationed in these lands for generations, watching over the descendants of Adam. He spoke of seeing my forebears live and die, of witnessing Cain's city thrive and Seth's tribe wander. Through it all, he remained a distant observer, until my songs pierced the veil between us. He confessed that from the first night he heard me, he felt something stirring within him, something new and forbidden. He tried to resist, but when he saw me dancing with such joy at the festival, the temptation to draw near overcame him. As he spoke, I drank in the sight of him, and found him no monster, no cruel tempter. Rather, he seemed almost childlike in his earnest curiosity, like a lonely soul starved for companionship. And I, a lonely soul in my own right, felt an unexpected kinship with this being of light. Our conversation waned, and we found ourselves standing nearer than before. I realized with a flutter that at some point I had moved close enough to feel the faint warmth radiating from his body. My face was tilted up to his. Though taller than any mortal man, he stooped slightly, drawn in. There was a charged moment where neither of us spoke or moved. I cannot say who crossed the last small distance. Perhaps we both did. One breath we were apart. The next his forehead rested gently against mine, and I closed my eyes, trembling. "Naamah," he whispered, my name a reverent prayer on his lips. An overwhelming tenderness flooded me. But just then, a distant cock crowed, the first herald of dawn. Shamdun stepped back abruptly, his wings flaring with alarm at how long he'd lingered. "I must go," he said, voice pained. Duty and caution warred with longing in his expression. I understood. I nodded, though my heart sank. "Will you come again?" I dared to ask. He hesitated only a moment before answering, "Yes." And then, with a powerful sweep of his wings, he vanished into the thinning night. I stood there alone, the dew of morning chilling my feet, hardly believing what had passed. I had spoken with an angel. More astonishingly, he had listened and cared. As the sky lightened, I returned to my bed, cheeks still flushed and mind whirling. I felt like a woman caught between waking and dream, with one foot in each realm. Chapter 2: Fallen Angels. In the days that followed our first secret meeting, I went through the motions of life by day, milking goats, kneading bread, mending clothes. But inside, everything had changed. I carried a secret flame within me. Now, how could I not? I had tasted the forbidden thrill of communion with a watcher. I felt like Eve savoring the apple, or Pandora peeking into the jar of mysteries, and I was not about to turn back. Each sunset found me anxious and breathless, counting heartbeats until nightfall, and each night Shamdun returned. At the edge of the acacia grove, in the hush when families banked their fires and fell asleep, we found one another again and again. What began as cautious conversation blossomed into heartfelt companionship. Freed from the day's prying eyes, we spoke for hours under the cloak of darkness. I shared stories of my childhood mischief, making him laugh softly, a sound like wind chimes stirring at night. At the time I hid Jabel's best goat just to see him frantic. He told me of the wonders he had seen from afar, glittering cities built by Cain's other descendants, desert caravans under the stars, even far-off mountains where other watchers kept vigil. In turn I taught him the little human things we mortals take for granted, how to whistle a simple tune with a blade of grass, how to skip stones across a pond. His first stone sank like a lump of lead, to our mutual amusement, but he improved rapidly, and how to savor the taste of ripe figs and honey. Though angels did not require food, he found delight in sharing a stolen picnic of fruits with me, beneath the trees. Night by night, our intimacy grew. We held hands as we wandered beyond the camp's edge, and he no longer started at my touch, but leaned into it. I grew used to the rustle of his wings trailing on the ground, and he grew used to the cadence of my mortal heartbeat quickening whenever he drew near. We were an unlikely pair, watcher and woman, yet we fit together in spirit as if made for each other. It was inevitable that friendship would soon deepen into love. Perhaps it had been love from that first night he spoke my name, though we dared not admit it immediately. But one crystal clear night, under a sky thick with stars, The truth became undeniable. I remember that moment vividly. A meteor streaked overhead, burning a silver arc across the heavens. I gasped in delight and pointed, and Shamdan, watching my face upturned to the sky, murmured, "Beautiful." When I turned to agree, I realized he was not looking at the meteor at all, but at me. There was such open adoration on his face that I felt my heart might burst. He caught himself, as if embarrassed by the depth of emotion he'd revealed, and tried to glance away, but I would not let that stand. With trembling fingers, I reached out and touched his cheek, guiding his gaze back to mine. "Beautiful," I echoed, my voice barely more than breath, and I meant him, not the sky. In the silence that followed, something shifted irrevocably. He drew me into his arms then, and I went willingly, our bodies pressed close beneath the ancient stars. We stayed like that for what felt like an endless moment. His heart thundered under my ear in a rhythm that matched my own racing pulse. Tentatively, he tilted my chin upward. Our eyes met, mine, searching the endless hazel depths of his flickering over my face, as though drinking in every detail. "This is wrong," a distant thought pricked at me, but it was drowned by the roar of blood in my ears and the surge of desire in my chest. There, under the cosmos's silent gaze, we kissed. At the first brush of his lips, I felt light explode behind my closed eyes, as if a star had burst to life between us. His lips were cool and impossibly soft, hesitant at first, then growing hungry when he sensed no objection. I answered with equal fervor, years of pent-up longing pouring forth. In that kiss, the boundaries between mortal and angel blurred and fell away. We clung to each other as though drowning in sweetness. From that night on, our love was a burning secret that consumed us both. We tried to be prudent. We knew full well the peril. Shamdan often struggled with guilt. We swore an oath. We watchers, to observe, never to intervene, he would say, raking a hand through his dark hair as we sat together beneath the sheltering boughs. "If the others discover how far I've fallen," his words always trailed off, his wings drooping in despair. I would place a comforting hand on his and finish the thought. He could not. "They would punish you." Sometimes I saw real fear in his eyes, not for himself alone, but for what judgment might befall me as well. Despite his fears, he could not stay away, nor could I ever turn him away. Our bond had grown too strong. We became careful, making sure to meet farther from camp, in hidden dells or caves by the river, away from any human eyes. And in those sanctuaries, our love found its fullest expression. At last, on one blissful night, we joined as one in body as well as soul. Under the broad leaves of an ancient terebinth tree by the riverbank, on a warm night perfumed by wild jasmine, Shamdan and I consummated our forbidden union. We laid down together on a bed of soft moss. I remember the feeling of his wingtips trembling as they wrapped around us, shielding our naked forms as he gently covered my body with his own. There was reverence in his touch, a careful awe, as though I was something sacred, and perhaps to him I was the very embodiment of the mortal world he had so long watched from afar, now in his arms. Our passion ignited like nothing I had ever known. Each caress, each soft gasp and whispered word between us felt like the forging of a new universe. When we finally crossed that last threshold, joining together completely, I cried out, not in pain, for he was tender and patient, but in sheer overwhelmed joy. An angel's tear fell upon my cheek at that exact moment. Shamdan wept, even as he smiled, overcome by the wonder of what we shared. In his eyes shone love unfathomable. The stars wheeled above, silent witnesses to an act both divine and earthly. Afterward, we lay entwined, listening to the gentle burble of the river nearby and the night calls of owls. He traced patterns on my skin as if committing every curve to memory, and I combed my fingers through the midnight strands of his hair. If time had stopped then and there, I would have been content. But alas, dawn always comes. As the eastern sky began to blush, we both sensed the encroaching reality. Shamden's face reflected mingled bliss and dread. "I fear what comes next," he confessed softly, his fingertips gently resting against my collarbone, as if feeling the steady beat of my heart. I turned onto my side to face him fully, propping my head on my hand. "We will meet whatever comes," I vowed. "Together." He closed his eyes and pressed his forehead to mine. "Together," he agreed in a breath. For a moment, something like a dark shadow flickered in his eyes, perhaps a premonition of the trials ahead. But then he kissed me one more time, dispelling the gloom, and we parted with the sunrise. He to resume his watcher's vigil among the clouds, I to my tent with the taste of heaven still on my lips. Our joy in each other, however, could not remain hidden forever. Unbeknownst to me, we were not the only ones crossing boundaries in those days. One night, as Shamden and I lay in each other's arms beneath the pomegranate trees, he spoke in a troubled whisper of events unfolding among his brethren. "There are murmurings," he said, fingers absently stroking my hair. "Many watchers have grown uneasy. Some have been watching what we do." I tensed, but he shook his head. "Not exactly spying on us, but observing all the watchers. There are those like me who have found themselves drawn to human women." His voice was barely audible. "Samiaya, our leader, suspects that a number of us may break the law. He's convening a gathering." I felt a chill despite the warm night. "A gathering?" Shamden nodded, jaw clenched. "On Mount Hermon, in the north. They plan to make a pact to all descend and take mortal wives together, so that none of them can be singled out for punishment. They'll share the blame equally." I sat up, wrapping my arms around my knees. As I absorbed this, my mind flashed back to the festival night when my angel had first been seen, and I wondered, had my actions perhaps emboldened others? Had the ripple started with us, only to become a wave? Shamden continued, voice heavy. "Azazel, one of our chiefs, is especially eager. He argues that we can teach mankind many things to better their lot, even if heaven forbids it. He has always had a rebel's heart." The name Azazel sent a shiver through me, though I did not know it then. That name would be cursed in ages to come. "And what of you?" I asked hesitantly. "Will you join their pact?" A long silence followed. He sat up beside me and took my hand in both of his. "Naamah," he said slowly, "my oath is already broken. Because of us. I did not need their pact to choose this path, but I fear what open rebellion might bring." He gazed up at the sky, perhaps seeking guidance in the cold glitter of stars. "If many of us fall together, heaven's wrath may be great." I pressed against his side, laying my head on his shoulder. "If your brethren come to walk among us openly," I whispered, "we will face that new world hand in hand. Perhaps it won't be wrath at all. Perhaps it will be a new dawn. Angels and humans living together." Even as I said it, I sensed how naive it sounded, yet I yearned to believe it. Shamden tried to smile at my optimism, but it faltered. "Perhaps," he sighed, "but something tells me our Father will not let such a transgression stand unchallenged." In the following weeks, as the pact of the Watchers took shape far away, I discovered that consequences of our union had already begun to stir, not in heaven, but within me. I noticed the change subtly at first, a wave of nausea in the mornings, a sudden weariness after nighttime meetings with my beloved, and an unaccountable heat that flushed through me at odd times. Then one crisp dawn, as I returned home from bidding Shamden farewell, I felt an unfamiliar flutter low in my belly, a sensation like a tiny bird stirring. A realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. Life quickened inside me. I placed a trembling hand over my abdomen and knew it to be true. I was with child. A rush of emotions nearly overwhelmed me. Astonishment, joy, fear, all entwined. A child, my beloved's child, but also a child of uncharted nature, half human, half angel. What would such a being be like? Would I even be able to carry him to term? Yet as the early sunlight broke over the horizon, I closed my eyes and hugged that secret to myself, silently promising the tiny spark of life that I would protect it, come what may. I did not tell Shamdun immediately. Part of me longed to share the news at once. I could already imagine the wonder on his face, but another part held back, uncertain of how he would take it, given his anxieties. I decided to wait until I was sure, and until I had a better sense of the storm gathering around us. Unseen by mortal eyes, the Watcher's rebellion was in full motion. Before long, the impact became visible in our world. Shamdun came to me one night, his expression grim and resigned. "It is done," he said. 200 of us, led by Semiaza and Azazel, swore the oath and descended. I felt my heart both lift and sink. He had not joined in the public pact, but his brethren had thrown the dice nonetheless. "Even now," he continued, "they walk the earth as men. They have taken wives. Many of your people have welcomed them. Others," he trailed off. He didn't need to complete the thought. I could imagine it. Not every family would be pleased to have their daughters courted by otherworldly beings. Soon reports trickled through our region, tales of towering, godlike strangers seen in distant cities, of weddings attended by tall men with luminous countenances. These sons of heaven began imparting knowledge openly to their new mortal family. True to Shamdun's warning, Azazel taught the crafting of elaborate weapons and shields from Tubal-Cain's metals, gifts meant to protect, but which in time encouraged war. He also showed women how to adorn their eyes with crushed coal and wear fine jewelry, trinkets of seduction. Perhaps a generous act at first glance, but one that bred vanity and jealousy among people. Other fallen angels taught the secrets of roots and herbs, the signs of the stars and heavens, enchantments and sorcery. Humanity was awakening to powers and crafts beyond our previous ken, and not all of it was for the good. More alarming were the children born from these unions. It didn't take long. Within a generation, strange infants were noted in villages across the land. Rumor reached us of one woman who died birthing a child of unusual size, and others spoke of infants who grew up at frightening speed, towering over playmates. These offspring, half angelic like the babe I carried, would come to be known as the Nephilim, the fallen ones, giants of renown. At first they were regarded with awe as demigods or heroes, but as they reached adolescence, many of these Nephilim became violent, their appetites excessive. They could outstrip 7 men in strength and would not be governed by normal restraints. I heard whispers that some Nephilim demanded livestock and crops in obscene quantities, and when that did not suffice, they indulged darker hungers, devouring that which was forbidden. It made my skin crawl to imagine it. In our own tribe, these troubles were still far-off murmurs. My people carried on, largely unaffected in the immediate term, though a subtle unease grew. Noah, the great-grandson of Seth and a righteous man known even to us in Cain's line, began preaching that we must return to the old ways of virtue and abandon the corrupted practices spreading in society. Few listened at first. Noah was considered a stern throwback, whereas most were entranced by the newly revealed arts and pleasures. I too paid little heed to his warnings at the time, for my attention was consumed by my own private world. Through all this, Shamdun and I clung to each other, trying to maintain a bubble of normalcy. He remained fiercely protective of me. At times I saw guilt in his eyes when news of a Nephilim atrocity reached us. He would hold me, murmuring, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I would hush him gently. None of those horrors had touched us directly. Not yet. In my heart I still cherished the hope that perhaps our child would be different, spared the Nephilim's curse of cruelty. As months passed, my condition could no longer be hidden. My womb swelled earlier than it might have with a normal child. By the 3rd month, I was forced to feign a love of heavy shawls and remain close to home. Murmurs circled among the women of the tribe. Naamah has taken a secret lover. Who is the father? Zillah and Ada confronted me kindly, assuming I'd had a youthful indiscretion. I let them believe I would reveal his identity in time and asked for their patience. They, out of love, shielded me from prying questions as best they could. One night, under a waxing moon, I finally told Shamdan what he had perhaps already suspected. Taking his hand, I guided it to rest on the gentle curve of my belly. Our unborn child responded with a fluttering kick, as if recognizing his father's ethereal touch. Shamdan's eyes went wide in wonder. "Is that?" I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. "Our son," I whispered, for somehow I felt certain it was a boy. Shamdan let out a breath of astonishment and joy mingled. He fell to his knees before me, pressing his ear to my middle, then looking up at me with reverence. "A son," he repeated, voice trembling. We stayed like that for a long moment, a strange little family in the making, half lit by moonbeams and hope. If only that moment could have lasted. But doom was closing in on us from all sides. The cries of the innocent had reached the high heavens. The violence of the Nephilim, the bloodshed and chaos unraveling creation's order. The world was overrun with corruption, and the Creator's patience was at an end. Shamdan sensed it before I did. One evening, late in my pregnancy, he arrived breathless and agitated. "Naamah, my love, something is coming. A decree." He struggled to find words. "The archangels are descending. Heaven means to cleanse this abomination." I felt a jolt of terror. Cleanse? What would that entail? Shamdan's next words made it clear. A great punishment was planned. The archangel Raphael had already gone forth to bind Azazel, hand and foot, and cast him into darkness below the earth. And Gabriel would incite the Nephilim to mutual destruction. There were even whispers that a great flood was ordained to wash the corruption away entirely. My heart clenched in terror, a flood to drown the world. What would become of my family, my people, our child? Shamdan took my hands, eyes desperate. "Listen to me, there may be a chance. Noah will bring aboard a pair of every creature. Some say he might even allow other kin, if they prove themselves." He trailed off, the unspoken suggestion hanging between us. He wanted me to try to get on that ark. I pulled away, shaking my head in disbelief. Go to Noah and beg to be taken in? The thought was almost absurd. Noah's kin were of Seth's pure line, loyal to the Eternal One. What would they do to a woman of Cain's blood carrying a Nephilim child? Likely cast me to the waves without a second thought. I remembered the other tradition about my name. Those who said Naamah was Noah's righteous wife. I was certainly not that Naamah. They would never accept me, I said bitterly. Or our baby. Shamdan's expression showed he feared the same. His shoulders sagged, and I saw tears shine in his eyes. "I cannot lose you," he whispered, voice raw. "I will not." He cupped my face in his hands as though memorizing every contour. "I will find a way to keep you safe. Both of you." In his eyes I saw a fierce resolve rekindle. That was the last night we spent together as husband and wife in all but name. By the time the pale fingers of dawn crept over the horizon, Shamdan knew what he had to do. "The archangels are hunting down my brothers," he said, glancing at the brightening sky with dread. "If I remain, I will draw their gaze to you." He placed a hand gently on my belly. Our son kicked in response. As if protesting his father's impending departure, my throat tightened. He was right. If he stayed by my side, we would become a beacon for heaven's wrath. Tears spilled down my cheeks as the realization sank in. "No, please," I begged softly, though I knew there was no alternative. Shamden pulled me into his embrace one final time. I could feel his heart breaking against my own. "Raise our son well," he said, his voice thick with sorrow and love. Tell him I wanted nothing more than to stay, but I left to save him." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Our lips met in one last lingering kiss, salty with tears. Then Shamden stepped back, spreading wide those beloved black wings. The golden light of morning caught in his hair and on the tears shining on his face. With a mighty stroke he lifted into the air. "I love you, Naamah," he called softly. "Forever," and then he was gone, a dark silhouette rising swiftly into the dawn, until he vanished from my sight beyond a bank of cloud. I collapsed to my knees, silent sobs shaking me. He was gone. The sky above was empty, save for the gathering grey of storm clouds on the horizon. Storm clouds. And far off, a low rumble of thunder that heralded the bringing of the flood. Chapter 3. Mother of Demons. The sky grew black as slate and the rains began to fall. A relentless deluge beyond any spring storm we'd ever known. I watched in numb silence from a rocky hill as water pooled and then churned into raging torrents across the land. This was the flood that Shamden warned of. Heaven's unflinching purge. Thunder bellowed like the wrath of God, and lightning shattered the darkness, illuminating scenes of panic in our encampment below. Tents were swept away in an instant. Families clung to one another, crying out in terror. I could do nothing but watch. Any attempt to help would mean death for me and my unborn child. My father Lamech, my mother and kin. I caught sight of them struggling in the rising waters, but soon the furious rains hid them from view. A wail of despair tore from my throat as I realized I was truly alone. A towering wave smashed against my hillside perch, knocking me flat. I curled instinctively around my swollen belly, determined to shield my child. Cold water crashed over me, filling my mouth and lungs. I coughed and sputtered, fighting to find air, but another torrent engulfed me. In those moments under the churning flood, I truly believed my end had come. I felt a calm strangely settle within, a fierce refusal to surrender. I would not die here, not after all I'd endured. If the Creator's aim was to wipe me and my baby from existence, he would find in me a stubborn adversary. Perhaps it was that act of defiance, or perhaps some lingering protection from Shamden's blood in my veins. Whatever the cause, the floodwaters did not claim me. Instead, I was buoyed up like driftwood and carried for miles. I remember only fragments, clinging to a broken palm trunk as it bobbed on endless seas, the sky and water indistinguishable in their fury. Time lost meaning in that waterlogged nightmare. When at last the rains ceased and the waters began to retreat, I found myself alive atop a soggy mound of earth that once had been a mountaintop. Corpses of humans and beasts littered the landscape like fallen leaves. The air was eerily quiet under a leaden sky. Coughing up water, half delirious, I realized I had somehow survived the judgment that drowned the world. I struggled to my feet, shaky and weak. My child, miraculously, still stirred within me, a reassuring flutter amid the devastation. Not far off, the enormous Ark of Noah perched on a rocky outcrop as the waters drained. I could see tiny figures, Noah's family, emerging, blinking at the pallid daylight. They were too distant to notice the lone, bedraggled woman watching from another peak, and I did not call out to them. That chapter of humanity was not mine to join. It was then, as I stood amid the ruin of one world and the uncertain birth of another, that a figure approached me across the wet, corpse-strewn ground. She seemed to materialize from the mist, a tall woman, hair as black as night and skin pale as moonlight. Her eyes were like embers, burning with ancient knowing. Though I had never seen her face, I knew at once who she was. Lilith. She was legend made flesh, the first wife of Adam, the one who had rebelled and fled Eden. I had heard whispers of her since girlhood. Lilith, the night demon, mother of monsters. And here she was, striding toward me with effortless grace, bare feet, not so much as dirtied by the mud. A strange thrill coursed through me, partly fear, partly kinship. In her features I saw a reflection of what I had become, a woman who had defied both God and man, and paid the price of exile. Lilith stopped an arm's length away, head tilted as she appraised me. A faint smile curved her lips. "So," she said softly, voice rich and lilting, "you are Naamah." I swallowed, nodding warily. She was breathtaking to behold, both seductively beautiful and fearsomely alien. I noticed a pair of dark wings folded at her back, much like those Shamdan once bore. It surprised me, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Some tales say Lilith consorted with angels as well, and perhaps even became like them in form. She followed my gaze to her wings and let out a musical laugh. I have worn many shapes over the ages. This form pleases me at the moment. Her laughter died as her amber eyes flicked to the corpses around us, and then back to my swollen belly. "The slaughter spared few," she murmured, "but you and your unborn child, you live." How very interesting. Trembling and weak, I nearly collapsed. Lilith darted forward and caught me under the arm, surprisingly strong. "Easy, sister," she said, and there was genuine concern in her tone. "You've been through quite an ordeal." At that simple word, sister, tears filled my eyes. The enormity of all I'd lost and survived came crashing down. With a broken sob, I leaned into Lilith's support. I felt no malice in her, only an ancient sadness and solidarity. We were, indeed, like sisters now, the only two women left from the world before the flood, neither of us righteous in Noah's sense, both of us cursed and unchosen. Under Lilith's gentle guidance, I left that accursed mountain. She led me eastward, helping me wade through marshy shallows and devastated forests. How far we traveled I cannot say. My memory is hazy with exhaustion. At last we arrived at a dry cave in the highlands. There, with only Lilith by my side, I gave birth to my son. Ashmedai, or Asmodeus, as mortals later named him, entered this new world wailing and vigorous. To my immense relief, he appeared entirely human in form, a beautiful babe with a downy cap of dark hair and curious, intense eyes. I wept as I cradled him, overwhelmed with love and grief all at once. This was the child of my angel, the living piece of Shamdan that remained with me. The thought gave me comfort, even as it cut me with longing. Lilith hovered near, oddly maternal for such a famed demoness. She brewed a broth of crushed herbs to strengthen me, and taught me charms to quiet the infant's cries. During those first difficult days, she was my only companion and savior. Without her, I might well have perished from childbirth fever or despair. In time, I came to realize that fate, or perhaps some dark mercy of heaven, had arranged for Lilith and I to find each other. Alone among all creatures, we had survived God's wrath, 2 outcast women and a newborn babe. As I recovered, Lilith shared her tale with me, and I in turn shared mine. Our bond deepened into a lasting friendship sealed by shared tragedy and rebellion. "They tried to erase us," Lilith said one night as we sat at the cave mouth, watching the stars reappear in the healed sky. "Yet here we remain, thorns in their side. I nodded, gazing at little Ashmedai asleep in my arms. They will not ever be rid of us, I whispered, a steely promise in my heart. We soon left that cave and journeyed south, finding refuge by the shores of the Red Sea. This remote region, far from Noah's nascent settlements, became our haven. Here in the roiling heart of the sea, we discovered an otherworldly sanctuary. By moonlight, Lilith revealed a hidden island that mortal eyes could not see, an isle veiled in illusion, lying at the very center of the Red Sea's waters. Upon its black sand shores and in caverns dripping with salt crystals, we made our home. It was on that enchanted isle that I fully became what destiny had long been, coaxing me toward. No longer mortal woman, but something other. In the embrace of those dark waters and with Lilith's tutelage, I shed the last vestiges of my old human life. I scarcely aged. My once warm blood ran cool and quicksilver fast. I found I could swim the depths for hours without need of air, and conversely, could ride the night winds above the waves with almost the same ease as spreading a pair of unseen wings. My son Ashmedai grew swiftly, as did all offspring of mixed angelic lineage. Within a mere few years he was no longer an infant, but a clever, fierce child with eyes that glinted mischief. Lilith loved him as if he were her own, and in many ways he became the son of both of us. Under our unconventional parenting, Ashmedai thrived, but it became clear that his destiny, like ours, diverged from any normal path. By the time he reached youth, Ashmedai's inherent power and restlessness pressed him to roam. Eventually he departed our Red Sea sanctuary to wander the wider world. In later ages he would rise to renown, called the Prince of Demons, Challenger of Kings. But that, as they say, is another story. Lilith and I remained, and in the passing centuries we discovered we were not the only ones of our kind. Other she-demons found their way to us, drawn either by kinship or summon. Two in particular joined our circle, Egrat Bat Malet, a wild, beautiful spirit known as the Dancer of the Roofs in distant deserts, and her mother Malet, also called Makala. With the arrival of Egrat and Malet, our sisterhood numbered 4, for an ancient night angel named Asheth often came as well. Some equated Asheth with Malet herself. According to mystical tradition, we 4, Lilith, Naamah, Egrat and Malet, became known as the mothers of demons. Each of us gathered and led camps of unclean spirits, and each was said to hold sway over one of the 4 seasons of the year. Indeed, at the turning of each season we would meet atop Mount Neshpe, near twin peaks called the Mountains of Darkness. Picture the scene. Upon that haunted mountain peak, under a sliver of moon, 4 silhouettes whirl in a frenzied dance around a bonfire of black flame. The air is alive with the howls of spirits and the frenetic beat of unseen drums. Lilith's laughter peals above the cacophony as she leads the wild revel. Egrat and I join hands, our hair whipping in a wind that moves of its own accord, while ancient Malet chants spells in a forgotten tongue. Demons by the legion circle and caper about, their eyes glowing like embers. In those gatherings, mortal time and law held no meaning. It was our sacred Sabbath, a communion of unbridled night force shared among our dark sisterhood. There, beneath moonless skies, our armies of shadow would celebrate in a kind of infernal carnival. Interestingly, the sages of men later divided the year into 4 parts beginning in Tishrei, Tevet, Nisan, and Tammuz, and in their whispered lore they linked each quarter to one of us, the queens of spirits. But to us, these were simply our nights of freedom and power. Over time, Naamah, the woman I once was, receded into memory, and I embraced my role as a demon queen fully. I became known as one of the great angels of prostitution, as the sages dubbed us, a temptress spirit who, like my sister Lilith, would seduce men in their dreams and draw them into nocturnal emission. Many a midnight I have slipped invisible into the bedchambers of sleeping men, weightless as a wisp of mist, and breathed desire into their ears. In dreams they see a maiden of unearthly beauty come to them, unaware it is my form entwining with their unconscious. Their sleeping faces flush with ecstasy as I drink deep of their ardor, and by dawn's first light I depart, leaving them spent, yet smiling from pleasures they think a mere fantasy. From such encounters I would take the men's essence, their seed, and from that bearing demons into the world. These demon offspring were invisible to mortals, but very real. Often I would send these children to Lilith to raise, for she delighted in nurturing our dark progeny and strengthening our collective brood. I also took on darker tasks. Together, Lilith and I became a scourge to the newborn children of Eve's descendants. Still bitter at the loss of our own mortal families and the betrayal by heaven, we sought a cold comfort in vengeance. On certain nights we crept into the homes of unsuspecting families, unseen and silent, save for the flutter of a curtain, and hovered over cradles. With a soft hiss we would still the breath of an infant in its sleep, or brush it with a fever that no medicine could cure. The ancients came to blame us for infant deaths and diseases. One text says we specifically presided over children's illnesses like epilepsy and diphtheria. Indeed, the crying fits and convulsions of babies were often attributed to our time. Mothers learned to hang amulets inscribed with our names above cribs, Lilith and Naamah, begone, hoping to ward us off. Sometimes it worked, but other times, if we were hungry or the parents had been impious, not even charms or prayers could bar us from claiming our due. For countless centuries we persisted, undying and unaging as the world of mortals flourished anew from Noah's line. Kingdoms rose and fell, and still Lilith and I walked this earth. The sages puzzled, all demons are subject to death, so why did we endure through the ages? The Zohar itself answered, by special decree of the Holy One, we would abide until the very end of days, to test and try humankind. We were, in effect, part of the balance of creation now, necessary evils that would not be swept away until the final redemption, if ever. We learned to move among mortals when it suited us, sometimes even assuming human guise to achieve our ends. Our paths occasionally crossed with notable figures of history. It is said in one fanciful midrash that Lilith and I were the two mysterious harlots who came before King Solomon to dispute ownership of a baby. Each of us idins to be its mother, though in truth neither of us was, for the child was a mortal royal babe we sought to steal. Solomon, famed for his wisdom, saw through the ruse and thwarted our ploy with his clever proposal to divide the infant. Thwarted we may have been, but that wise king would later come to know my son as well. For Solomon eventually encountered Ashmedai Asmodeus, who by then had become a great demon king in his own right, ruling over spirits of wrath and chaos. The tales of Solomon and Asmodeus, of how my son tricked that king, seized his throne for a time, and later helped build the temple, are recounted in legend, and through them mortals came to fear the very name Asmodeus. Little did they realize that behind Asmodeus stood a mother, me, who had nurtured him on demon's milk and set him on his path. As eras passed, my name too seeped into human awareness, albeit in fragmented, often contradictory ways. In some rabbinic lore, I remained the shadowy seductress of old, pleasant of ways, but dangerous, the one who possessed the power to seduce both human and angelic beings. Some writers conflated or confused me with a mortal Naamah altogether. Kabbalists wrote of me with a mix of fear and respect, naming me one of the 4 brides of Samael, the dark archangel, sometimes equated with Satan, and a queen of the demonic realm of shells, ruling the direction of the east, the quarter of Damascus as they reckon. They described my role as a patroness of the mystical arts of divination and singing pleasant songs to pagan idols, a nod perhaps to that drum I once beat in service of love and rebellion so long ago. I was regarded as the mother of Ashmedai Asmodeus in demonological genealogies, and thus effectively a progenitrix of countless devils who plagued mankind. In Gnostic teachings they even gave me another name, Naamah, and associated me with the darkest aspect of the Sephira Malkuth on the Tree of Life. Through all these depictions, a consistent thread wound through. Naamah, whether called demon or fallen angel, was a being of music, sexuality, and night. I wore that mantle proudly. I had long since made peace, or at least a defiant acceptance, with the Eternal One's decree. If heaven would not have me in its light, then I would revel in the darkness. And revel I did. Men built temples and shrines to gods and goddesses of love and death, not realizing that behind many of those idols, my sisters and I whispered, drinking in the devotion or fear like sweet wine. Cults sprang up in ancient cities where priestesses of Ishtar or Astarte invoked my name as Naamah Zeno, Naamah the harlot, in rites of sacred sexuality. For even in holiness the echo of my gift of erotic power lingered. Yet, through the long eons, I never forgot who I once was. A girl with a pure, beautiful voice, beloved by her family and cherished by a heavenly angel who dared fall for her. Though I rarely speak of Shamdan, his memory lives in me. In quiet moments, I still hum the lullaby I sang when I first felt his presence in the dark. Sometimes when I wander alone under a new moon, I fancy I hear an answering hum from far beyond the veil of this world, a reminder that love, once birthed, does not easily die, even if the lovers themselves become outcasts of heaven and earth. So now you know my story, a tale not found in any canonical scripture, yet alive in the hushed warnings and half-remembered myths of humankind. I, Naamah, was born of flesh and became something more, a survivor of divine wrath, a consort of angels and devils, a mother of monsters, and a weaver of dreams. I have been called many things, temptress, demoness, goddess, witch, but think of me not in simple terms of good or evil. Like the bittersweet melody I once strummed on my cymbals, I am a harmony of light and shadow, a being shaped by cruelty, yet still capable of the gentlest lullaby. Lilith was not the first, nor the last. After Lilith came me, and after me came others, each carrying forward the torch of defiance in her own way. We live on the fringes of your stories, we women who refuse to be erased. The next time you hear a faint strain of music in the dead of night, or feel an inexplicable longing tug at your soul when you're utterly alone, know that it might be Naamah's song reaching out to you. Perhaps I am there just beyond mortal sight, smiling in the shadow. For I still wander this world, immortal and unbowed, an eternal presence in the night, a reminder that some spirits of legend, once awakened, will never again be silent. And now, my darling rebels, let the last echoes of Naamah's song fade into the dark, like a candle finally surrendering to dawn. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Temple of Nyx for more forbidden myths and midnight legends, and comment below where you're listening from and what part of Naamah's tale stayed with you the most. Now unclench your shoulders one last time, soften your jaw, let your hands go heavy and still. Good. Sleep deeply, and if you hear music in your dreams tonight, don't be afraid, it's only the night remembering you.